name is Cece.
I'm Lane.
And together we're going to talk a little bit about weddings. And the reason why we're doing it is 2 years ago, I was able to plan my dream 3-day Pinterest weekend.
Yeah, it was really good wedding.
Thank you.
Pinterest ready.
I was able to do it under budget and relatively stress-free, especially given that it was my busiest year of work. So what we're going to do today is Lane is actually engaged.
Yay!
And about to plan a wedding. Oh, and there's Strider, Lane's dog. But essentially, Lane's about to start planning her own wedding.
Yeah.
So she's going to ask me questions about how to plan my wedding.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that will help you.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna role play here for a little bit. It's spicy.
All right.
Cece, I'm so stressed out. Tell me what to do. Imaginary mother-in-law is driving me crazy, and there's all these flowers and cakes and I don't know what dress, whatever. Tell me your ways so I can have a Pinterest wedding.
So if you're a really stressed out bride, if there's a lot going on, one of the things I love to tell stressed out brides is that if you're a project manager or if you're sort of any job with organization, I'm always telling people use your skills at work to take care of the rest of your life. So I'm always using things that I do at work to sort of optimize the rest of my life. If you don't have those skills, that's also okay. You're okay. You're fine. It's also okay if you don't have those skills because I can share some of my knowledge. So essentially, if you're in the beginning phase of planning that wedding and you do want a Pinterest wedding, what I like to say is that if you don't know what you like, pin a lot of pins and actually categorize your pins. So you want pins for, the sort of venue that you're dreaming of, the type of dress that you want, the flowers that you like, all that stuff. And what that does is it helps you to form a pattern over time. So you're pinning a lot of things and you're not thinking about it. You're just like, oh, I'm going to pin everything I like of all the venues. What you're going to end up doing is you're going to start to develop after you pin 30 pins or 100 pins or however many you want to pin. You're going to start to be able to see patterns and you're kind of seeing like these things that are coming up. You might not be able to say that, okay, I like weddings that are outside with lavender and lanterns, right? That could be your thing. Lavender and lanterns could be your thing. And it's very hard to actually formulate that because you've never done a wedding. You don't have the experience. But when you pin things, you'll start to develop a pattern. And that's kind of how I figured out, my color scheme, what kind of venue I wanted, the kind of dress I liked, the kind of ring that I wanted, and all that good stuff. Yeah. So that's really the first step for somebody who doesn't know what they want.
Yeah. How long should you spend? Because I know like some people like me just spend forever pinning things.
Yeah, so I would say that you can spend as long as you want, to be really honest. One of the things that brings you happiness, and there's research to back this up, is the forecasting of the event. So the advice is always, if you're traveling, you're planning a wedding, the sort of like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing, looking forward to it, it makes you happier than potentially the event. Right? Yeah. The event, like, the vacation, sometimes you have fights or things don't go well, or the wedding, it can be stressful, it can be really rushed. So the happiness of forecasting or anticipating that event can make you happier. So I like to say the Pinterest part is like really fun for most people. If it stresses you out, don't do it. Yeah. But yeah, you can enjoy it for as long as you want.
So like what categories would you like recommend? Like cake, venue, dress, bridesmaids, flower.
Yeah, so
engagement.
Yeah, so those are all excellent categories. I feel like
makeup.
Yeah.
What else? Cards.
Lane just did an excellent thing, which is kind of to list a lot of the categories of things that you have to worry about at a wedding. And my advice is, if that seems overwhelming, if that's like, oh yay, that makes you really happy, then just do that. Yeah. But if that is overwhelming, pick the top 3. So I'm going to ask you right now, of the categories that you listed, what is your top 3?
Photography.
Okay.
I don't know. It's not very... Never really
Lane doesn't really care about... So what's interesting about Lane, when we set up this thing, is Lane doesn't actually care about lots of things. This is actually perfect and easy.
When I look at dresses, I'm like, they all look the same. What is this?
So what that says to me is that for Lane, photography is number one. That's her number one priority. Yeah. And so the advice I would give to some of you who might be more interested or interested in all the categories is pick the top 3.
Yeah.
And that's actually my go-to tip for all new brides is to pick 3 categories that are really important to you at your wedding. Is it food and drink? Is it your wedding dress? Is it your makeup and hair? Is it flowers? Is it photography, right? And knowing your 3 top things is really, really great because that's where I would focus your money, your time, and your effort. Everything else, think of it as icing or as secondary. So if those things aren't perfect, don't worry about it. That's also how you stay under budget too.
And I would say also like photography ties into like hair and makeup because you can't look good in photos unless you look like $1 million.
Yeah,
so
it is
that's
true.
That's like 3 things are. And a dress, you need like a decent dress.
So that could be your 3, right? Is photography, hair and makeup. Hair and makeup, I always like to sort of lump as one because generally you get one person to do it. And then wedding dress. Those could be your 3. Or you could be like, hey, I'm okay with, like, I don't care the different styles of wedding dresses. So I just want one that looks nice. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time or money on it. Instead, I care about the venue. I want the background to be beautiful. So it could be venue, hair and makeup, and photography, right? So it's good to know.
Does it help you when you start researching? Do you start like, you start calling all the venues and looking at all the prices and stuff? Do you start like categorizing them into like high, medium, and low end on the price?
I didn't do it that way, but I think you could. I think that's definitely an option. Yeah. The way I think about all of these things is that, number 1, try to limit your choice. In terms of what you're choosing from. What I mean by limiting choice, I'll explain this, is that what people do is they get really excited and then they research like 30 to some of my more obsessive friends, 100
oh my God.
venues and photographers. And have you ever heard of choice paralysis? Researchers have found that when you're giving too many options, so let's say jars of jam, right? If you're given an option of 3 jars of jam, you pick one, you're super happy, right? You got 3 choices, you picked one, really good. Now, if they give you 15 jars of jams to choose from, you're going to choose one and you're going to feel not happy because there's so many choices, as all of us, that you got so many choices, you were paralyzed by choice, you're going to feel like maybe I didn't choose the best jam because there were so many different categories. And grocery stores have actually started to reduce the number of choices based on this research so that people don't feel unhappy with their choice. You can apply this to your wedding and I think you should.
I really think we should. Wait, so how does it work? So like you go to Yelp and then there's like you type in like wedding photographer and then there's like 500 of them.
Yeah, don't go to Yelp.
Okay,
that's number 1.
Okay,
don't go to Yelp because the thing about Yelp is that it's an aggregate of all the people in the world, and you start to, the people that float up ends up being the average, like a good average, but still the average, right? The best way to get vendor ideas is to use your friends. So chances are you have friends who are like you in terms of taste and whatever. So I started my wedding, and I've had other people do this to me. I asked everybody who I knew had gotten married, who I liked their wedding, and I was just like, hey, do you have any spreadsheets? I have friends who create spreadsheets. Yeah, I know. Like I have friends who are lots of manager type friends, lots of like anal organized. We live in Silicon Valley. We work at Google. It's very type A. But anyways, I'm just kind of like, do you have any resources of your research, right? Like because they've already done the research. Why am I reinventing the wheel, right? And so you get some information that way, and then you do a little bit of research. But I'm gonna promise you, looking at 25 venues and looking at 100 venues, it's not going to make much of a difference. Like, you're going to think like, oh, okay, I'm going to find the perfect venue if I look at 100 versus 25. It doesn't, your brain doesn't work like that. So I really feel like if you're stressed out, like if you love it, do as much as you want. Right? But if you're stressed out, you're working, you have a busy year, you don't have time for this, limit your choices as much as possible. Because it doesn't, to be really honest, unless it's your top 3, the rest of it just does not matter. Like, I care about flowers, but it wasn't my top 3. And I ended up going with a vendor that I really disliked. He did not do anything that I wanted him to do. I thought he was going to, and it was like he gave me cheap flowers and whatever. But because it wasn't in my top 3, because I didn't spend all that effort, I didn't put all that energy and resources into it, when I got kind of mediocre flowers, they still look good in photos. And I'm not as upset
You just let it go.
Yeah, as I would have been if I was like, oh, I really, like I picked you from 80 vendors, right? Or like 20 vendors.
The bachelor flowers.
Yeah, so it really helps you to stay happy if you're just like, okay, I'm going to focus on 3 things that are really important. I'm going to spend my time and effort on those 3, especially if you're busy. If you're not busy, you want to plan, that's great. Just do it, right? But if you're busy, you don't have time, just optimizing for the 3, spending your time, effort, and money on those 3, and then the rest being sort of like, okay, I'll just go with something that works in my budget, that seems good enough, is actually better.
So let me run through it. It's like you ask your friends about like their wedding, and then you have a spreadsheet, and then you start filling out like.
You don't. Let me interrupt. You don't have to have a spreadsheet.
Okay.
And I would say that spreadsheet is actually crazy making. Like unless you have that kind of personality or you just like love spreadsheets, spreadsheets are generally unnecessary.
Because they start making you like you want to fill it out, so you fill out like 50 of them.
Depends on your personality. It can be really overwhelming to do a spreadsheet, and it's not necessary. It's nice to have a spreadsheet if you're trying to compare vendors. So I did have a friend who shared her spreadsheet of all the different vendors for the venue and how much each costs to help her sort of make rational decisions. But that's the other thing is that you think you're going to make a rational decision. It's going to be mostly emotional. That's just your brain. That's how your brain works.
Like my boss got married here, so I don't want to get married here.
Yeah,
that's it. That's how venues are chosen.
Yeah, or you're like, we never truly ask ourselves, like, is this venue worth $2,000 more than this venue, right? Like, we can't really rationally answer that question. So some of that is just like, it's good to put the numbers down so it's clear, like it clarifies. But when you get to your top 2 or 3. I think you can, like, I think if you're not emotional, you could potentially make it a sort of, like, is it worth $2,000 more for this venue versus this or whatever? You can do a pro-con list. Yeah. But some of it is going to be emotional, and that's okay.